having a slice of pizza and a Coke, but I wanted to share this story. It's called Getting to Know Your Pets. Chapter 1. New York City is one of the greatest cities in the world. People who don't think so gotta be out of their minds. Being born and raised here, I can tell you this city's got everything you need and all within walking distance. There's entertainment everywhere, lots of artwork for your fancy schmancy cultured types, and the food, well, don't get me started. If you look beyond all the trees in Central Park and the buildings in Manhattan, you can find the true heart of the city, the characters, true New Yorkers. We may not always show it, but we love this fair city of ours and we wouldn't trade it for any other. Take old Henry over there. What if we said, take my friend Henry, for example. Before I met him and his friends, they didn't know what this city had to offer. Why, with just a little bit of tutelage, they found out just how magical this city can be, because that's what I do. I'm a people helper. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I better start this story from the top. I'd say it all began last spring. It was a Saturday, a beautiful, warm, sunny day that found Henry Clay sitting on the favorite park bench of mine, absent-mindedly cleaning his glasses and watching the festivities in Central Park, just like he had done every previous Saturday since he was a teenager. You see, Henry, like me, was born here. He used to come to this park on his father's shoulders as a small boy. His father was an architect, and he had a hand in designing some of the most prominent structures you can see here today. Pardon me. But it was always important to Henry's father that the boy understood the beauty and tranquility the park had to offer. When Henry lost his father at a young age, he made a promise to himself never to forget that. On this particular Saturday, Henry gazed out over the soccer fields and watched with delight as the children played. To his left, in the foreground, was an instructor teaching the elderly Tai Chi. Henry marveled in their slow, graceful movements, almost mimicking them himself as he watched. Meanwhile, a never-ending line of tourists moved past him on their way to here or there. They'd carry shopping bags or push strollers with babies. He'd even seen one stroller with a set of twin schnauzers riding in it. He always enjoyed the look of awe on their faces when they made the transition from the bustling pace of the city to the beautiful serenity of the park. After a while, Henry got up from his park bench. He didn't have any time for his usual Saturday stroll, but he made it a point to hit the important spots. He threw a coin in Bethesda Fountain, made sure to thank William Shakespeare for his many contributions to literature, and stopped to hear a little music under the arched bridge on the south side of the park. That's where Henry's favorite street musician, a guy named Douglas, and his cat would perform every weekend. Henry had been coming here for months, and every day before he left, he always threw a $20 bill in Doug's guitar case. Doug had just finished strumming the last chords of Stephen Still's Love the One You're With when Henry fished a bill out of his wallet and threw it in the case. This time, it had a picture of Ben Franklin on it. Doug looked at his guitar case and then at his cat for a moment. He lifted his head to look at Henry. "Thank you, brother," he said to Henry. My pleasure, Doug," Henry said with a smile. "I had some good fortune last night, and I just want to reciprocate." "Well, God bless you, brother." "God bless you right back." "Oh, and you too, kitty," Henry said, giving the cat a little chin scratch like he always did. Before he left the park, he stopped to admire the blossoms of the weeping willows and the Kwanzaa cherry tree that bloomed this time of the year. Near the pond, he spotted the pink and red dotted white seeds of the elm trees, another one of his favorite attractions. Henry breathed it all in, filled his lungs with sweet oxygen the plants and trees produced. He exited the park and proceeded to cross through Columbus Circle on his way to the next task. Henry walked along Ninth Avenue with a certain spring in his step. He had news, great news, and he was just bursting to let it out. As he got deeper into the city, he began to see some of the buildings that housed off-Broadway plays. He was reminded of the times his mother would take him to see the musicals she loved so dearly. Henry could never understand how a person could break into song in the middle of the day, but he was starting to get the gist of it. He was so excited, so triumphant because of his wonderful news. He just wanted to let it out. He imagined himself in a sailor suit jumping into the fire escape and singing out loudly, "People of New York, it's a wonderful day and I've got news to tell you." Luckily, he thought about it for a second and decided to walk along with the spring in his step. That would suffice. He pushed on past the hard-working delivery men dropping off fresh produce and other supplies to the many markets and restaurants in the area. Henry always loved this part of the walk. It reminded him that the people were the pulse of the city. To his right, Henry could see the owner of his favorite Greek restaurant in Hell's Kitchen opening the back door of his establishment. "Hello, Mr. Pappas," Henry called out to him. "Henry," the large Greek man answered, "you and your friends don't come around no more. How come?" "We've been really busy with company, Mr. Pappas, but I have a feeling it's all about to pay off." "Good, good. Then maybe you come and I make you some celebratory spinok pita, eh?" "You betcha," Henry said with a smile. "Calamira, Mr. Pappas. Calamira, Henry. Say hello to Carrie and Ben for me." Mr. Pappas was referring to Henry's roommates, Carrie and Ben Davis. Carrie and Ben were siblings, and the trio had been friends for years. They were to be the recipients of Henry's great news, which reminded him that he needed to pick up the pace. Another one of his favorite stops was still 5 blocks away. Inside his head, that imaginary musical was still playing. He was whistling without even realizing it as he navigated through the joggers and the stop and start picture takers without any hesitation. Henry was an experienced New York walker. He learned tricks while he was growing up, like the importance of a subtle shoulder dip or an arm tuck. But more than that, he was especially good at looking ahead to see a possible cluster of tourists and formulating a plan to get around it once he got there. He crossed onto 39th Street, and there on the corner was a large open tinted area with a sign that read, "Hell's Kitchen Flea Market." The sign caught Henry's eye, and his mind went back in time. He developed his love for collectibles from his mother, and while she mostly dabbled in antique furniture, Henry had become an aficionado of many things. She taught him the difference between what was classy and what was just plain crap. She also schooled him in the fine art of haggling, something of which he was especially proud. He walked through the entrance and started perusing from vendor to vendor. He passed a guy selling knives and swords. He knew for the most part they were cheap knockoffs. He passed by the countless kiosks filled with pashmina bags, leather bags, and cheap costume jewelry. He stopped by this old place that sells comic books and other paraphernalia to skim through all of the Fantastic Four comics. He had recently been turned off by the Marvel zombies, but was finding his way back to Marvel and Fantastic Four, only to find the edition he was looking for was missing. Once he got to the far side of the building, he noticed an area in the corner filled with all kinds of stuff. An old box with the word "Books" written on the side caught his eye. Henry walked up to the box and blew a layer of dust off the top, creating a cloud resembling something stirred up by Charles Schultz pig pen. He slipped a hand inside and pulled one of the books out, one covered with gold lettering that was reading, "Get to Know Your Pets, a Guide to Truly Understanding the Person Inside Your Pet," by Professor Perry Rosset. Henry couldn't believe his luck. He had recently purchased his first pet, a mynah bird he wished to teach to talk. He was always a little envious of the relationship Carrie and Ben had with their pets, a cat and dog respectively. He had the exotic bird now for more than a month, but as hard as he tried to make it a connection, the bird wasn't having it. Henry reached and read and researched for all the information he could find on the internet, but didn't remember seeing any mention of this book. Still, something about the title was really familiar. Henry couldn't quite put his finger on it. He saw it as a sign. As he admired the fine craftsmanship of this book, he noticed in the center of the front cover was a small purple stone embedded in the leather. Henry didn't recognize this gem, but that just made it more intriguing. After seeing he was the only one in the area, Henry realized the vendor was nowhere to be found. A lady eating a hot dog and carrying several shopping bags approached him and noticed the book he was holding in his hands. "Wow, that's a really nice book," she said, in between the bites of her hot dog while setting her bags down. "Do you mind?" She took the book and ran one of her fingers over the purple stone, getting a little mustard on the edge. Henry politely took the book back. "Oh yeah, I'm very excited about it," he said, wiping mustard off the corner of the stone. "I'd pay just about anything for it." With that, the woman finished her hot dog, picked up the bags, and stepped back behind the counter. "That'll be $1,000 for the whole box," she said as she grabbed a soda from behind the counter and took a swig. $1,000? Okay, I see what you did there. That's very clever, but you're never going to talk me out of that kind of money," Henry said defiantly. "This isn't my first rodeo, lady." "Ah, I can see you're an intelligent individual. $500 for the whole box." "Where do you get 500? $500 for 50 books. That's $10 a book. You show me where you can find a better deal." "I don't need 50 books. I only want the one. Here's $10 for one book. Deal?" "No deal," the woman said, lacking any expression. "Keep the one book and sell the other 49. "How am I going to sell 49 books? "Now you see my dilemma." "Look," Henry said, slightly exasperated, "I will give you $50 for one of the books. That's 500% profit." $100. "Why 100? You're breaking up the set." "There is no set," Henry said, fully exasperated now. "It's just a dusty box of books that no one's ever heard of." 100 and I'll throw in this lamp," the woman said as she pulled one of the ugliest lamps Henry had ever seen from behind the counter. "I'll give you the 100 to keep that lamp." "Nope, you got to take the lamp." "Why?" "Because I'm tired of looking at it." "Fine," Henry said, finally giving in. He picked up the book and the god-awful lamp and made the woman. "Good day, ma'am." "Say, how much do you want for those shoes?" the lady said, eyeing his Skechers. "I'm leaving now," Henry said, having just had quite enough. He exited the flea market and continued walking up 9th Avenue. He stopped at West 43rd Street to run into CJ's Fine Spirits for a bottle of bubbly to accompany the good news. As he left the store, all he could think about was the book and how he couldn't wait to read it. Maybe it was the answer he had been looking for. Henry always felt there was a reason in life for all things, and he just knew it was his destiny to find that book. He was sure of it. Finally, Henry reached West 45th Street and approached the 8th-story apartment building that was his home. He pulled the book from the recycled grocery bag and thumbed through it as he walked to the elevator. Without looking up, he pushed the button and waited for the car while skimming the pages with his eye. Something about the book was different, and he had a strong feeling it was going to change his relationship with his bird, Tohoko. Henry didn't have to watch the floor number display in the small square window above the buttons. He could tell by the strong spices filling his nostrils that he was on the fourth floor. Miss Patel always made her curried chicken on Saturday. He pulled his eyes off the book just long enough to exit the elevator and work his key into the apartment door lock. As soon as he opened the door, he heard the screaming. "Shut up, shut up, shut up!" Carrie repeated, clearly frustrated with the screeching black bird locked in the cage before her. As soon as he saw Henry walk in, she turned on him. He protected himself by holding up the lamp in front of his face. He didn't know if it was the size of the lamp's base or its ugliness, but Carrie stopped advancing on him and shouted, "Your stupid bird won't be quiet." "Well, maybe you shouldn't have threatened to deep fry him," Ben offered as he strolled out of the kitchen with his earbuds in, setting a cockeyedness to his own head. Ben and Carrie had been friends with Henry since their childhood. They loved each other like family, but Henry's mynah bird was going to bring an end to a long, close relationship if he didn't do something soon. Carrie was convinced it was evil and often threatened it with a violent end. "I don't think it speaks English. It's Chinese, remember?" "Yeah," Ben chimed in. "As in Asia Minor?" He chuckled at his bad joke. "Yeah, it's still not funny," Carrie responded. Tohoko squawked louder and louder until no one in the 1,100 square foot apartment could hear anything but the bird. Henry waved at him with the plastic bag from the flea market. Tohoko backed away from the crackling, frightening white object and finally grew quiet. "Good news," Henry announced. "I found a book at the flea market today that will solve the bird problems." "A cookbook?" Carrie asked. "No, it's a book on pets." Henry showed them the book. "There's some really cool stuff in here. Oh, and I also bought us a little champagne." He pulled the expensive bottle from its velvet bag and smiled widely. "Holy crap!" Ben said, grabbing Henry's arm. "Did you make senior? Did you get the promotion?" "I did. And I got us a bubbly to celebrate." "You bastard," Ben responded jokingly. "If Reverend Wilkes hadn't moved into our old neighborhood after Carrie and I moved out, you would have never met him. You wouldn't have this in your pocket right now, you son of a bitch." "I told you guys not to move," Henry told them playfully. "We tried to talk Dad out of it, remember, Carrie?" Ben asked. The three friends laughed and hugged. Carrie and Ben congratulated Henry with equal parts of affection and playful shoving. His connection with the highly sought-after Reverend W. Wilkes made him the most important member of the editorial staff at Discovery Publishing. Every publisher on the planet was trying to get the Reverend to tell his behind-the-scenes story of widespread corruption recently linked to a large charitable group. Henry landed an interview with the man, and the once senior partners of the company had found out Henry was offered a promotion. Although Ben hoped to make senior editor one day, too, he was incredibly happy for his best buddy. Carrie fought the urge to hug and kiss Henry. Since they were kids, she had an on-again, off-again crush on him. She was the younger sister, and he was the older brother's best friend, and even though they were now in their 20s, that magic still lingered. Currently, she was in an on-again, off-again crush stage, and it was on the on stage, so she held off on any public display of affection. She simply shoved him back and forth and clapped him on the arm, as her brother was doing, and pretended that's all she wanted to do. "I have to sign the Reverend in the next 30 days or the whole thing's off. It's a 30-day trial, but I've already talked to him and we're meeting on Thursday, so there should be absolutely no problem." "Man, I'm so happy for you," Ben told Henry. Carrie nodded in agreement. "Let's pop open that champagne, Playboy, and then take a look at this book. I want to see if some of the tricks this guy's talking about will actually work." Henry set the book in front of the birdcage as if he was trying to warn Tohoku of his upcoming lessons. The three roommates slipped off to the kitchen to open the wine. They toasted their bosses, the Reverend, themselves, and the world, and laughed and joked and enjoyed the moment. While the trio ramped up their revelry, Tohoku eyed the book closely. He hopped down from his perch and tapped at the leather binding with his beak. He moved along the front rail of his cage to get a closer look at the flat purple stone embedded in the book's cover. After several toasts, the friends decided to take the celebration to the streets. They would start with burgers from the Five Napkins joint over on 9th and wrap it up with an evening at O'Looney's on 50th as they ready to go to Hoku's squawking return. The bird jumped up and down in front of the cage door as if he wanted to join the group on their night out. Henry went to the pet and assured him that they would be back soon. He looked down at the book from the flea market and made a mental note to read it tomorrow. Similarly, Ben and Carrie checked on their pets before leaving for the night. Carrie's pet, Ingrid Marie, was a stray calico mix with white paws Carrie found outside the apartment a couple of years ago. Ingrid warmed quickly to her when she first arrived, but has remained standoffish to anyone else. Since Tohoku joined them, Ingrid Marie wanted little to do with everyone, including Carrie. The cat's otherwise amazingly soft, thick fur was beginning to shed more and more, mostly due to the aggravation caused by the constant din of the bird's cries. Ben had Bailey. Bailey was a happy, friendly Springer Spaniel and Border Collie mix with brown and black spots and long black ears that got soaked every time he drank water. Bailey loved people and playtime so much Ben would tire out long before the dog got bored with him. Ben always made sure his boy got a good night pat on the head and a scratch behind the ear before leaving him alone with the crazy bird and the skittish cat. The trio headed out for an evening of fun, pub hopping, and celebration. They hadn't been out in a while, so it felt good to be surrounded by the energy of New York City. The lights, the sound, the people, the food. The three of them enjoyed themselves late into the evening, overdoing it on everything from burgers to tequila shots. They knew Henry was feeling pretty good when he attempted to sing Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time in Spanish at the karaoke bar. But when it was Ben who was the most inebriated, it was a good thing tomorrow was Sunday and he could sleep it off a while. They made it home without any problems and fell asleep quickly. Many hours later, Henry awoke to the sound of a delicate tune being expertly whistled. It was absolutely lovely. As he regained consciousness, the music grew louder and louder. Still, even as the volume rose, the tune remained light and beautifully crafted. Henry slowly rolled out of bed and followed it. At the end of the gentle music was his normally shrill bird Tohoku. Henry was blown away by the sweet sound emanating from the jet black bird with the funny orange wattle. Tohoku was standing at the bottom of the cage directly in front of Henry's new book. He got the distinct impression that Tohoku was trying to get his attention. It was as if the bird was attempting to communicate, but Henry couldn't make any sense of it. He scuffed his way to the kitchen with the intention of making coffee, but found it already made. Carrie was up and reading the Sunday paper at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in her hand. "That was weird," she said to Henry as he joined her. "What was weird?" he responded. Tohoku was absolutely quiet until a couple of minutes ago. He was just sitting there in front of that book staring at the cover. Then he started singing that song out of nowhere. The next thing you know, you come out of the bedroom like you're following the Pied Piper. More like the Walk of the Dead, although I'm not really that hungover. It was kind of like you said, like there was a tune drawing me out of the room. We definitely need to check out that book today. Oh, it's all just coincidental. I think that purple stone on the cover has me mesmerized or something. Just look at him. He's staring at it. Just then, Tohoku stopped his tune and made a sound that could only be described as raspberries. Henry broke out laughing, but Carrie didn't find it the least bit funny. "I say we head over to the park and spend the day lying in the sun watching the soccer games," Carrie suggested. "I like the sound of that. We can read the book and then go," Henry answered. What's this we stuff? Carrie interrupted. He's your bird. We all have to live with him, though, so I was thinking we could read it together. It doesn't have to be right this minute. Ben's not even up yet. Tohoku went from lovely songbird to screeching chicken in 2 seconds flat. While he cackled wildly, he flapped around his cage, upsetting the mirror and the water dish. Ben stumbled from his bedroom, his head in his hands as if his neck couldn't hold it up. He was clearly much more hungover than his roommates. No, Bird, no, stop, please, Ben pleaded as he nearly crawled towards the cage. Quiet, Birdie, quiet, shh, quiet. Oh, my head. Ben stopped, dropped on the couch, and buried his face behind a pillow. Tohoku became silent quickly and turned his attention back to the book. Henry wants to go to the park, Carrie informed her brother. No, that was you. I want to read the book. Can I just get coffee and get some sleep? Ben responded. Henry pulled the pillow away from Ben's mouth and took a seat in the armchair next to him. I'll get you a coffee, and then we can read the book, Henry told him. Carrie joined Ben on the couch. Henry stood up and went to his room. He decided to give Ben a few more moments to sleep while he got ready for the day. He could hear Tohoku rattling his cage. The bird was about to have some sort of episode, and Henry needed to head it off, so he dressed quickly. He went to the kitchen for Ben's coffee. He brought the cup and the book back with him. Before sitting down, he picked up Tohoku's cage and moved him closer to the group. Yay, Ben mumbled with fake enthusiasm. It's story time. He motioned for Bailey to come join them. Nothing helped a hangover more than a hot cup of coffee and cuddles with man's best friend. Luckily for Carrie, she wasn't hungover because Ingrid Marie wasn't the cuddling type, although Carrie wished she was. However, Ingrid was awake and curious about the goings-on in the living room. Since the bird was finally calm, she decided to enjoy the Sunday morning with everyone else rather than hide under Carrie's bed as she had always been. Henry opened the old book and flipped through its pages looking for the table of content. Hey, they got a section on dogs in here, he told Ben. Oh, yeah? Ben sat up a little and began to listen. Bailey doesn't need any help, but does it have a section on how to get him to stop licking, Ben looked at Carrie and then back at Ben. I'll check. Henry responded sardonically. Tohoku screeched. See if there's something about shedding, Carrie asked. Ingrid Marie is losing her hair. I'm sure it's because of that bird, but I just want to check. Tohoku made a loud barking sound and then jumped up and down in his cage. He followed that with a noise that sounded a lot like a siren, then operatic singing. Carrie, Ben, and Henry stared at the bird and then at each other. Go right to the bird part, man, Ben told him. Your bird is losing it. Henry flipped to the section for birds. Here's something on teaching them to speak, he said aloud. Tohoku jumped and made a whirling sound. I could teach him to play a piano, it says. Henry looked at his bird and knew the animal had no interest in learning an instrument. He continued to turn the pages until he came to the last chapter in the book. It was an exercise for all pet owners and their pets. Hey, check this out, Henry said. Tohoku grabbed on the front bars of his cage, getting as close to Henry as he could. Ben sat up a little and stroked Bailey while he was watching Tohoku. The bird's odd fascination and suddenly engaged behavior had Ben's curiosity up. Carrie sat quietly with Ingrid watching the whole scene, absent-mindedly stroking the cat's back. It says, to truly know your pet, one must spend time inside their mind. You must understand the world as they see it. In order to accomplish that, follow the lead of the Zupati people. The Zupati tribe shares a mental plane with their animal friends in a most unusual way, and all you need is the stone from the front of this book and the incantation below. Simply hold the book in both hands in such a way as to cradle the purple stone in your left hand. While cradling the stone, repeat the incantation. You will then meld with your pet and understand their every thought. Henry looked up from the book. Oh, it's like a Vulcan mind meld? I'll bet. Carrie rolled her eyes and then slipped into a prone position on the couch. Okay, let me give this a try, Henry continued. Tohoku jumped up and down several times and then made a squealing sound. Henry held the book open with both hands, cradling the purple stone in his left hand. He took a deep breath and began to read, Via Pariah. Nah, man, you gotta do it like the dude from Harry Potter or something. Via Papa, Ben told him. Tohoku began screeching. Okay, I got it, Henry responded. He deepened his voice and raised his left hand to the sky. Via para vig, so you messed it up, Ben scolded. Try again. Tohoku was now hopping from foot to foot. Henry cleared his throat, read over the words again, and repeated them in a whisper. He shoved his left hand in the air and started again. Via para vig ra. You, that dog is licking your lips, Carrie suddenly announced. He's trying to make me feel better, Ben explained. He wiped his mouth with his sleeve and gave Bailey a quick hug. Tohoku began jumping up and down like a child throwing a tantrum. Henry looked at him, certain the bird was trying to tell him something. Henry waved the book in the air and with his left hand started the incantation again. Via, para, vig, raha. Everyone sat in total silence, staring at each other. Just then Tohoku squawked something that sounded like, Moron! Nothing happened, Henry said, clearly disappointed. You really thought something would happen? Carrie asked, perplexed. Oh, I know, Ben asked. You didn't have the stone on your left hand. That's it, Henry replied. That's what, it didn't make it work, right? Carrie asked sarcastically. You're an idiot, she added. Then in Ingrid's ear, Carrie whispered, and so cute. Henry ignored her and repositioned the book so that the stone was cradled in his left hand. Via para vigraha. As soon as the last word left Henry's lips, the stone on the book began to heat up and glow. A white cloud rolled into the small apartment from nowhere. Its movement was slow, but it was so immense it quickly overtook the small living room. Henry couldn't see an inch in front of his face. Carrie called out to Ben, but got no response. She couldn't even feel Ingrid in her lap anymore. It was as if she was floating on a giant white cloud. Ben called to Carrie, but she never heard him. He reached out all around to find Bailey or Henry, anybody. The cloud was taking over. Henry felt like he was going down a hallway. Along the way, he passed a man. He could almost make out the man's features, but then he was gone. With that, Henry felt himself floating upward and then backward. He had no control over any of it. When the smoke cleared, Henry knew instantly that something was wrong. His vantage point in the room made no sense. Somehow, he was above everyone else. Just then, a man's voice rang out, and Henry completely lost it when he realized the man's voice was coming from Henry's body, but Henry was no longer in that body. He was seeing this from all inside the birdcage.